So every fourth woman in your country should be urinary incontinent.
Yeah.
But do they come to your office? No. My hope for the future is that these patients come out. We can help them with easy methods. We can do it as an outpatient procedure. It's very easy for us. Why do they not approach us? That's a miracle for me.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat malam. Selamat berjumpa kembali pada sesi live Perkina, Perkumpulan Kontinensia Indonesia. Hari ini saya kedatangan tamu spesial yaitu Profesor Matthias Oelke, guru saya, seorang profesor urologi di Hannover Medical School, tempat saya dulu sekolah mengambil S3. Saat ini beliau bekerja di St. Antonius Hospital di Gronau di Jerman. Prof. Oelke ini juga sering berpartisipasi dalam berbagai pertemuan ilmiah Perkina. Beliau diundang sebagai pembicara tamu di 2011, kemudian juga di 2012, dan di tahun 2013 saya kembali ke Jerman, waktu itu bersama Dr. Nurasyid juga, untuk belajar lagi dari beliau mengenai operasi-operasi inkontinensia urin. Jadi saya belajar banyak sekali dari beliau, terutama tentang urodinamik dan hal-hal tentang inkontinensia urin. So, let us welcome Professor Matthias Oelke. Hello, how are you, sir?
I'm pretty fine. Thanks for inviting me. Thanks for having me online.
Yeah, so busy today at the office?
Yeah, as you've heard, we are in the corona pandemic and the numbers are currently exploding again. So very high numbers in Germany, more or even higher in the neighboring countries, especially Netherlands. And my hospital is 1 kilometer away from the Netherlands. So we have to adjust to the situation on a daily basis. And it's a lot of organization to find a good way for the patients through the hospital systems without becoming infected.
Okay. So, Professor, thank you very much for joining me for this live YouTube session. This is the Indonesian Continence Society celebration of 20 years. So it is a special edition. And I believe that your acquaintance to Indonesian Continence Society goes way back. I think you met our former chairman, Professor Haider Mohtar, in the Netherlands. What year was that?
This was 2004 to 2008, so a long time ago.
Okay. And then we met each other in Hannover. I was just finishing my PhD. And then you taught me a lot about urodynamics and the anti-incontinence surgery, both in women and in men. So, Professor, do you think it's important to have a close international collaboration and also a collaboration with a multidisciplinary department?
So these are two questions. I think it is extremely, at least for me, it's extremely important to have contact to other societies, to other countries, to other continents. It's not only nice to meet nice people like you. We've met in 2008 the first time, but it's also interesting to learn from others. You have different approaches how to diagnose, how to treat urinary incontinence compared to our society or to other societies. This is something it's interesting to learn, and I can pick up some ideas from Indonesia, from you, from other countries. But also there are some diseases or conditions which are more frequent in your country than in my country. For example, stress urinary incontinence. This has to do something with labor work, with cesarean sections, and so on. It became pretty popular in Northern Europe, North America, to have cesarean sections. And I'm still adjusting. I still think that you in Indonesia have like vagina deliveries. So I'm assuming that stress urinary incontinence is more frequent. So we can learn from each other. That's the message.
Yeah. And I read that you are active also in the International Continence Society. You are one of the committees. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, the International Continence Society is our mother society of all the national and regional continence society. We, for example, have the German Continence Society, you have your Continence Society, but we have the mother society called International Continence Society. And this is a society I've been member since 1996, so it's now 24 years member. And at a certain point, I've decided to join the society, which is completely open to everybody. And everybody's work is much appreciated. And I've been working in the standardization steering committee since about 3 years. This is a committee that is responsible for guidelines, for example, terminology. It's important when I use a word or a phrase or diagnosis that you assume it's exactly the same in Indonesia. So we need standardization. And I've been committee member since 3 years, and I'm turning out to be the chairman starting at the end of this month. So in the next 2 weeks, I think it's going to start. So we are writing. Thank you very much. I don't know if it's a big honor, certainly, but it's a lot of work, and it's hard to combine your clinical work with this, let's say, committee work. But yeah. I'm pretty positive about this, that we are going to produce some very nice new guidelines. For example, the terminology of female lower urinary function and dysfunction is going to be updated. So this is a new guideline, a terminology report we are going to publish in about 2 years. Then it's a new one about prolapse. We are intending one to have a report about post-void residual urine measurement. So I'm starting several projects, which take about 2 years. I'm not doing this alone. I'm only the committee chairman, and I have got groups with many dedicated members. Yeah. So if anybody from Indonesia is interested to join societies, first you have to join International Continence Society, then you have to apply for the committees, and then you're heartily welcome to join and work with us on the reports.
Okay, so is Professor Marcio Averbeck in your committee also?
Marcio Averbeck is originally from Brazil. He's a good friend of mine, and he is in some committees, and we have worked together in one committee, but he is now in different committees, but I'm going to be the committee chair, so I'm going to meet him on a weekly basis in the future.
Yeah, because we interviewed him last week, I think, and he told us that he's also in the standardization steering committee as well.
Yes.
So how about in Germany, Prof? How about the Deutsche Kontinenzgesellschaft? I think it was founded in 1987. So how has it been evolved in the last 33 years? Is it connected also to the ICS?
No, it's a complete independent society, but somehow they are all linked together. So when you go on the homepage of the German Continence Society, then you have a link to the ICS. Of course, we use the same terminology. We talk about the same diseases, but they are independent and they only work in Germany. I've been busy with the German Continence Society since about 20 years, but we don't have guidelines. This is a responsibility of our specialty groups. For example, the German Society of Urogynecology writes the guidelines about the urogynecological diseases like stress urinary incontinence, urgency incontinence, OAB, and so on. So ICS is independent from German Continence Society.
Okay, and how it is embedded with the DGU, the Association of Urology in Germany?
Again, it's completely independent, but there are certain links. For example, when we have our annual congress, we have a booth of the German Continence Society and vice versa. And the members of the German Continence Society are mostly members of the German Urology Society. So it's completely independent, but in person on topic, it's somehow connected.
Okay. So this is a rather personal, Prof. When did you decide, or when did you know that you want to work in this specific field, the functional urology, the neurourology, and incontinence? Is this specialized field is popular choice in Germany? Because I can say for Indonesia that it is not as big, not yet anyway, it's not as big as, for example, oncology or endourology or stone surgery, for example.
Yeah. When I was young, and I started with urology. I wanted to have a good overview. So I jumped on the topics which are frequent in office, in hospital. And frequent in office is LUTS BPH. Think about 20% of the male population is affected. It's about urinary incontinence. We have about 20% of the population who have some type of urinary incontinence. It's about 50% of those people have OAB, urgency incontinence. The other was stress urinary incontinence. So I jumped on the topics which are pretty popular. Later I found out there are not many focusing on these topics in Germany. At least they have no specialty on this topic, no focus on the topic. In Germany and almost all Western society, it's only oncology. Only oncology, and when you want to become chairman, you have to be oncologist. And functional urology is extremely important, but it's not valued by your society, your specialty society. So there's a high demand, which has also some advantages. For example, when you do research and want to write articles, it is pretty easy to publish like articles on BPH and functional urology, neurology, because there's not much competition. When you do the same work with oncology, it's going to be very hard to publish articles because oncologists are everywhere. So you have to be maybe even one class better than a functional urologist to publish your articles in oncology. I've published now about 300 articles, and I didn't have any major problem to publish my articles because everything what I did was completely new.
Yeah.
And you can still find the new topics in functional urology. For example, as you mentioned, detrusor underactivity. That is one of the topics. It's brand new, and not many people do research on it. And if you do research, you are at the front, in the pole position of your society.
Yeah, I agree. So like you said that you have published a lot of scientific papers. So I believe that you think that research is important for the foundation of the clinical management of this field. What do you think about it?
Yes, absolutely. Research is good for the society, but it's also good for the authors. Because when you deal with a topic, you have to jump into the topic, dig deep in it, and you have to have a good overview. So when you do research, it's not only that you find new findings, it's also that you have to rehearse all the other information within the topics. So you're developing as a specialist when you write articles. I would highly recommend that everybody who does functional urology does research as well. This gives you more quality in your work.
Yeah. Okay. And what are your hopes, Professor, for the future of this field? Let's say the next 20 years. What do you think? What's in store in the urinary incontinence in specific? And like you mentioned that there's still a gap, a knowledge gap in the detrusor underactivity, for example. And what do you think of this stem cells now that is emerging for the functional urology?
Yeah, it's not emerging anymore. It emerged about 10 years ago, and there were big hopes that we inject stem cells and the cells divide and form specialty cells like detrusor cells to contract. I'm not sure if they've done it with detrusor cells, but it was not very successful. There needs to be some gaps closed. Nobody talks about stem cells and tissue engineering anymore. My hope is that we find more patients to treat. When you see the prevalence numbers of diseases, conditions in society, then you're wondering, where are these patients? Are they in neighboring hospitals? Are they in private offices? No, they are nowhere. They seem to accept it. We have good technology. We have good tools how to diagnose the disease. Goes very straightforward. And we have very good, easy therapies when we're talking about incontinence. What we cannot treat is detrusor underactivity until now.
Yeah.
But with urinary incontinence, we have everything what we need. But we are not approaching the right patient. they're not coming in the hospital and asking for help.
Yeah.
I don't know why this is the case. We did so many actions. We did awareness weeks. We had like information posters. We had web meetings. We were calling out for these patients. There must be somewhere, but they're not in urology or gynecology hands. We don't see these patients.
Okay, I'm rather surprised to hear this, Professor, because I think that situation only happened in Indonesia because of the cultural background, because they're embarrassed and so on. But I know now that it's also happening in Germany.
Everywhere in the world. So when you work in a hospital in one center, you first assume they are with your colleagues. They may be better, they may be nicer, they may be cheaper, whatsoever. But when you ask them, they are not in this neighboring department. They are not in the neighboring city. Most probably they are too embarrassed to come out. And we have so good methods how to treat, for example, stress urinary incontinence.
Yeah.
We just did a summary, a systematic review and meta-analysis with the ICS about urinary incontinence in the developing world. We have just published this one with many people from Iran, from Saudi Arabia, from Pakistan, and there is a prevalence of about 25% of women in total. So every fourth woman in your country should be urinary incontinent.
Yeah.
But do they come to your office? No. My hope for the future is that these patients come out. We can help them with easy methods. We can do it as an outpatient procedure. It's very easy for us. Why do they not approach us? That's a miracle for me.
Yeah, that's also a big question for us. So one of the things that we have to do is to raise awareness to this kind of patients.
Yes.
And this is probably my last question, Prof. Do you have any take-home messages for the Indonesian Continence Society who's turning 20 years, and for maybe residents and young urologists who's interested to work in this field?
My recommendation is, if you have a young person who's independent, who's not fixed to family or children or to parents in your country, go out of your country, go to have a clinical work or scientific work, the best in combination, in a different country. What my recommendation is, when you think you should go to Netherlands, learn the Dutch language. When you go to Germany, learn the German language. Do your residency here. Do it in the university, a combination of a fellowship between clinical and scientific work. Have your merits with a thesis, PhD thesis, doctoral thesis, and then go back as a specialist to your home country. I would do it exactly in the same way. The problem is, if you do a PhD program, you do only research work, you're going to sit in an office, you're going to work on tables which somebody generated, and you don't get a deep insight in the topic. You have to do the clinical work as well. And it's just like you did, or even a little bit more, because you were finishing your PhD thesis in Hannover, and you were just writing the text, and within this period of, let's say, 6 months, you joined me in the surgery. But if you would have done it 3 or 5 years, you would have been a professor in my university and returning to your country with specialty knowledge and doing all the operations yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Start early in the foreign country, learn the language, be a part of the residency program. Within the residency, you do research and clinical work.
Yeah. And do you have any messages for the Indonesian Continence Society? Hopefully we can invite you again someday, if the situation gets better.
It would be very nice. In the current moment, it's very difficult because of the COVID pandemic.
Yeah.
But it's not Indonesia, Germany. It's everywhere. It's a global problem. Most easy way would be to go to the USA, where they have sub-departments of functional and reconstructive urology. But I'm doubting, in the current Trump situation, that you are going to have a visa and a working permit in USA if you're Muslim. It's becoming tough now.
Yeah.
We have colleagues who work in my hospital. They are from Northern Africa. They are Muslims. They're not allowed to go to the AUA anymore. They don't get a visa for the AUA. So it's going to be difficult. Most probably it's easier to go to Europe these days.
Okay. Okay, Professor, this is a very interesting interview, and I'm so glad to have met you again here. I hope you stay healthy and stay safe in Germany, and I hope we can see each other again in person someday, somehow.
That would be
And
very nice. I would like to send out best greetings to my to my friends in Indonesia, to all the people I met in the past and I regularly meet on the congresses. The only one I don't meet is you because you have a family, right?
yeah, I got married and then I had two children, so I
Yeah.
stayed back a little.
And and then the misery started, and you're not traveling anymore. But I'm very happy for you about your family. Feeling
Yeah,
very sorry about your father, what happened because
yeah,
he
thank you.
died.
Yeah, thank you.
He was a good he was a good man, and he started all the connections with Europe, and he was a great man, which everybody loved. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And he was very fond of Germany because he told me over and over again about his study in Berlin like a few years ago. So he was a
Oh
big
yeah.
fan of Germany.
When he started to tell you all the stories, you had the imagination that he stayed here 20 years, but it was certainly not 20 years.
Yeah, yeah, and he still can speak German very rather fluently.
Yeah,
I'm amazed.
yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
miss him, but I think he's in much better place now.
I
Okay,
hope so.
Professor, I won't take up any more of your time. So hopefully we can see each other again. Thank you once again for joining us for this interesting interview. And bye. Stay safe. Auf
Thank you very much.
Wiedersehen. Bye bye.
Bye bye.